I arrived at my son's house on Thanksgiving 2025 believing, foolishly, that love still worked the way it used to. Before I tell you what happened next, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe if stories about family, boundaries, and quiet strength matter to you. And tell me in the comments which city you're listening from. It reminds me I'm not alone. I'm Evelyn Carter and I'm 64 years old. For most of my life, Thanksgiving meant one thing: showing up anyway. Showing up with food, with patience, with a smile that said family matters more than pride. I showed up when my husband died. I showed up when my son moved away. I showed up even when phone calls became shorter and holidays felt thinner. So when November came, I packed my car with a carefully wrapped pumpkin pie, Michael's favorite since he was a boy, and drove 4 hours through cold gray skies to his suburban home. I didn't call ahead. Maybe that was my mistake. Or maybe I was afraid of the answer. The house looked perfect. Too perfect. Warm lights glowing, cars filling the driveway, laughter spilling through the windows, family. I stood there for a moment, smoothing my coat, steadying my breath. I imagined my grandchildren running toward me. I imagined Michael smiling, surprised but happy. I knocked. The door opened and everything I believed shattered in 1 second. Michael stood there holding a drink. He didn't smile. He didn't blink. He looked at me the way you look at someone who shows up where they don't belong. "What are you doing here?" he said. "I came for Thanksgiving," I answered softly. "This dinner isn't for you," he cut in, his voice sharp. "You don't belong here." The words didn't just hurt, they humiliated. Behind him, I saw movement. People paused, someone whispered. My daughter-in-law stood further back, her face tight, arms crossed, not surprised at all. I searched for my grandchildren. They weren't there. Michael leaned closer, lowering his voice as if what he was doing were reasonable. "You can't just show up, this is family time." Family. I felt my face burn. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped the pie. I didn't argue, I didn't cry, I didn't beg. Because something inside me, something old and tired, understood something important in that moment. This wasn't an accident. This was intentional. I turned around and walked back down the driveway without saying a word. Each step felt heavier than the last. I didn't look back. I didn't want them to see my face. That night, I sat alone in a cheap roadside motel, staring at the untouched pie on the dresser. And as the silence settled, one terrifying thought finally surfaced. This didn't start today. This had been happening for a long time. And the next morning, I would discover just how carefully I'd been erased. I didn't sleep that night. The motel room smelled like old carpet and disinfectant, and the heater rattled every few minutes like it was warning me not to expect comfort. I sat on the edge of the bed, still wearing my coat, staring at the pie on the dresser. It looked ridiculous there, out of place, unwanted, just like me. Around 3 a.m., when the silence became unbearable, I did something I hadn't done in months. I opened my phone and scrolled. At first, I told myself I was just looking for distraction. But deep down, I was looking for answers. I went through Michael's social media, slowly, carefully, the way you examine something fragile that might break if you look too closely. And that's when I saw it. Pictures, so many pictures, birthday parties, backyard barbecues, school events, Halloween costumes, Christmas mornings. My grandchildren were everywhere and I was nowhere. I zoomed in on one photo after another, my heart sinking with every swipe. There was Sophie, missing her front tooth, holding a cake I never knew existed. There was Noah in a superhero costume I'd never seen, standing between Michael and Lauren, both of them smiling like a perfect family. The captions made it worse. Grateful for family, nothing better than being surrounded by loved ones. Thankful for everyone who matters. Everyone, except me. I scrolled back months, then a year, then 2. And suddenly the past rearranged itself in my mind. The calls that went unanswered. The messages left on read. The holidays that came and went with vague excuses. The visits that were always too complicated right now. I hadn't been pushed out all at once. I'd been edited out. Quietly, methodically, without confrontation, like someone erasing pencil marks and hoping no one notices. My chest tightened as another realization hit me, one that hurt even more than Thanksgiving itself. They hadn't stopped taking from me. I opened my banking app with trembling fingers. Every month, without fail, there were transfers to Michael's account. Notes I had written myself, for the kids, school fund just in case, $18,000 over 3 years, money I'd sent out of love, money I'd sent while being erased. I set the phone down and stared at the wall as the truth settled in. They didn't want my presence. They just didn't want to lose my usefulness. By the time morning light crept through the thin curtains, something inside me had shifted. The pain was still there, deep and raw, but underneath it was something new, clarity. This wasn't about a misunderstanding. This wasn't about boundaries. This wasn't about me showing up unannounced. This was about control. And for the first time since my husband died, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. Anger, not loud anger, not reckless anger, the kind that makes you sit up straighter and say enough. I checked out of the motel just after sunrise and drove to a quiet coffee shop near the highway. I ordered coffee I didn't taste and opened a small notebook from my purse, the one I used to keep grocery lists in. At the top of the page, I wrote one sentence: "When did this really begin?" And as I started writing dates, names, and moments, a chilling thought crossed my mind. If they'd erased me from their lives, what had they told my grandchildren? That question would change everything. I didn't plan to confront Michael that morning. I told myself I just needed clarity, one honest conversation, one explanation that would make this hurt less. But clarity has a way of finding you when you least expect it. I was halfway home when I pulled into a rest stop and finally called him. My hands were steady this time. My voice was calm, too calm. He answered on the fourth ring. "What?" he said, already annoyed. "Michael," I began, "I need to understand something. Why haven't I seen Sophie and Noah in so long?" There was a pause, not surprise, calculation. "They're busy," he said. "School, activities." "Life moves on, Mom." "I could have worked around that," I replied quietly. "You didn't even tell me about Sophie's birthday." Another pause, then a sigh, the kind meant to sound patient. "Look, this is exactly why we needed distance." Distance from their grandmother. "Did I do something wrong?" I asked. "Please just tell me." His voice hardened. "You make things uncomfortable. You show up. You ask questions. The kids don't need that energy." My stomach dropped. "Uncomfortable how?" He hesitated, and then he said the sentence that changed everything. "They think you moved away." I didn't speak. "They think you went to Arizona," he continued, like it was a minor detail. "Lauren thought it would be easier than explaining why you weren't around." Easier? For whom? My hands started shaking so badly I had to pull the car over. "You told my grandchildren I left them?" I whispered. "They were asking questions," he snapped. "Kids don't need complicated family drama. So you made me the villain." Another pause, this one longer. "They don't miss you," he said finally. "They've adjusted." That's when I understood. This wasn't neglect, this was replacement. They hadn't just erased me, they'd rewritten me. I hung up without saying goodbye. I sat in the car for a long time, staring at the steering wheel, breathing slowly, forcing my heart to stop racing. My grandchildren believed I'd abandoned them. Every unanswered question, every missed hug. Every night Sophie might have wondered why Grandma stopped loving her. All of it pinned on me. Something inside me broke open, not grief. Resolve. I didn't cry. I reached for my notebook and wrote everything down, word for word. The date, the time, the phrases he used. Because in that moment I understood something crucial. People who lie to children do it because they think no one will hold them accountable. They didn't know I was done disappearing. By the time I started the car again, my hands were steady. I wasn't going to argue anymore. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to act. And the very next call I made would change the course of everything. I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove until the familiar streets blurred into something neutral, a place where no one knew me as Michael's mother. I parked outside a quiet public library and sat there, engine off, notebook in my lap. For years, my instinct had been to soften things, to explain, to wait, to hope. But hope doesn't protect children from lies. Action does. Inside the library, the air smelled like paper and dust, comforting, steady. I sat at a long wooden table and began organizing everything I had. Call logs, unanswered messages, dates I'd sent money, screenshots of family events I was never told about. Seeing it all laid out was sobering. This wasn't emotional distance. This was deliberate exclusion. I needed guidance, not sympathy. That's when I remembered Diane Walsh. Diane and I had worked together years ago when I was still teaching. She'd left education to work in family advocacy, specializing in elder and grandparent rights. We hadn't spoken in a long time, but I still had her number saved. I hesitated before dialing. What if she told me I had no rights? What if she said this was just how families drift apart? But then I remembered Sophie's missing tooth, Noah wondering where I'd gone, and I pressed call. "Evelyn," Diane said after the first ring. "Oh my God, it's been years." "I know," I replied, my voice steady but quiet, "and I wouldn't call if this weren't serious." She listened without interrupting as I told her everything: Thanksgiving, the silence, the money, the lie. When I finished, there was a pause, then she said something I will never forget. "Evelyn, what you're describing is parental alienation, and the fact that they lied to the children is extremely serious." I felt my breath catch. "So I'm not imagining this?" "No," she said firmly, "and you're not powerless." Diane explained the laws calmly, carefully: grandparent visitation, documentation, the importance of not reacting emotionally, of building a record instead. "You've already done the hardest part," she said. "You stopped begging." I closed my eyes. "What do I do now?" I asked. "You document everything," she replied. "Then you request contact formally. If they refuse, and they probably will, then we escalate. Not revenge, accountability." That night, back in my quiet house, I started a new folder. I labeled it simply Truth. And as I placed each piece of evidence inside, I felt something I hadn't felt since before Thanksgiving. Control. They thought walking away had made me disappear. They were about to learn something very different. The letter went out on a Tuesday. Certified mail, professional language, no accusations, just a clear request for contact and an explanation. Diane warned me not to expect kindness. "Sheer silence is their favorite weapon," she said, "but anger means they're scared." She was right. Michael called 3 days later. He didn't say hello. "What the hell are you trying to do?" he snapped. "Why are lawyers involved now?" "I asked for contact with my grandchildren," I replied calmly. "That shouldn't require anger." "You embarrassed us," he shot back. "Lauren's parents saw that letter. Do you know how bad this makes us look?" There it was, not concern for the children, not regret, image. "I didn't embarrass you," I said. "Your choices did." Lauren's voice cut in sharply from the background. "This is exactly why we needed distance. You don't know when to stop." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Then tell me," I said. "Why did you tell the children I moved away?" Silence. Then Lauren laughed, a short, humorless sound. "They were asking too many questions," she said. "We did what was easiest." "For you," I replied. Michael sighed loudly like a man inconvenienced by morality. "Mom, you're making this bigger than it needs to be," he said. "The kids are fine, they don't need you confusing them." "Confusing them by loving them." "You don't get to decide that," I said quietly. That's when the tone changed. "If you keep pushing this," Lauren said coldly, "we'll make sure the court knows how unstable you've been, showing up unannounced, obsessive calling. You don't look good on paper." There it was, the threat. My heart pounded, but I didn't flinch. "Document whatever you want," I replied. "I already have." The line went dead. I stood in my kitchen for a long moment, phone still in my hand. Then I started writing. Every word, every threat, every shift in tone. They hadn't just refused accountability, they'd confirmed everything. By the end of the week, Diane helped me file the petition. Not angrily, not dramatically, formally. And when the court date was set, something unexpected happened. Michael and Lauren showed up at my door, unannounced, standing side by side like a united front, but their eyes betrayed them. Fear. "This has gone too far," Michael said. "We can compromise." Lauren forced a smile. "Photos, updates. Maybe supervised visits, a few times a year." Crumbs. I shook my head slowly. "You don't bargain with lies," I said. Lauren's smile vanished. "You're going to regret this," she hissed. "When the kids grow up hearing what you put us through." I met her eyes. "They'll hear the truth." They left without another word. And for the first time since Thanksgiving, I knew something with absolute certainty. They weren't fighting for their children. They were fighting to keep control, and they were about to lose it. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. No grand pillars, no dramatic silence, just fluorescent lights, wooden benches, and a judge who looked like she'd seen every kind of family betrayal imaginable. I sat beside Diane, my hands folded neatly in my lap. I wore a simple navy sweater, nothing dramatic. I didn't want sympathy, I wanted clarity. Michael and Lauren sat across the aisle. They didn't look at me. Their lawyer did all the talking, calm, polished, confident. He described me as overbearing, as unable to respect boundaries. as a woman who had shown up uninvited and refused to accept that her son had moved on. When it was my turn, I stood slowly. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I told the truth about birthdays I'd missed, about calls that went unanswered, about money sent without question, about Thanksgiving, every word Michael had said. And then Diane asked the question that changed everything. "Mrs. Carter, what were your grandchildren told about your absence?" I swallowed. "They were told I moved away," I said, "that I chose to leave." The judge looked up sharply. Michael shifted in his seat. Lauren stared straight ahead. Diane continued gently. "Did you move away, Mrs. Carter?" "No." "Did you ever tell your grandchildren you were leaving them?" "Never." The judge turned toward Michael. "Mr. Carter," she said evenly, "did you tell your children their grandmother moved away?" Silence. Lauren whispered something urgently. The judge repeated the question. Michael's shoulders slumped. "Yes," he said quietly. "We thought it would be easier." The courtroom changed. You could feel it. The judge's expression hardened not with anger but with concern. "Easier for whom?" she asked. No answer. Then Diane submitted the evidence, call logs, bank records. Messages returned unopened, the certified letter, and finally my written account of that phone call, dated, detailed, precise. The judge read silently for a long moment, then she spoke. "This court is deeply concerned about intentional misrepresentation to minor children," she said, "particularly when it involves severing an existing emotional bond." She ordered an independent child evaluation. Psychological interviews, reports, follow-ups. Michael and Lauren's lawyer asked for a recess, denied. As we left the courtroom, Michael finally looked at me, not with anger, with something worse, fear, because the truth had been spoken out loud. And once the court hears the truth, it doesn't unhear it. The evaluation took 2 weeks. 2 long, quiet weeks where I wasn't allowed to contact my grandchildren at all. No calls, no letters, no messages. The court wanted the children's voices to be uncontaminated, their words, not anyone else's influence. I respected that. Michael and Lauren didn't. They called twice, then 3 times. Then they showed up once more, standing at the end of my driveway like ghosts who didn't know where else to go. I didn't answer the door, because for the first time I understood something very clearly. This wasn't about reconciliation anymore. This was about repairing damage. The day the evaluation report arrived, Diane called me first. "Evelyn," she said gently, "I want you to sit down." I did, then she read. The psychologist had interviewed Sophie and Noah separately, then together. Hours of conversation. Drawings, questions that seemed innocent on the surface but revealed everything underneath. Sophie remembered me, clearly. She remembered baking cookies, reading stories, helping with homework. She remembered waiting. According to the report, Sophie believed I'd stopped loving her, that I'd chosen a new life somewhere else. She cried during the interview. Noah had been quieter. At first, he said he didn't remember me very well, but when shown a photo one Diane had submitted, something shifted. He pointed. "That's Grandma Evelyn," he said. "She used to make pancakes shaped like dinosaurs." Then he asked the psychologist a question that broke me when Diane read it out loud. "Is she mad at me?" Mad at a 7-year-old. The report was clinical, professional, but devastating. The conclusion was unmistakable. Intentional alienation, emotional harm, fabricated narratives. The psychologist recommended immediate restoration of contact, unsupervised, consistent with therapy required for the parents. When the final hearing came, the courtroom felt different, heavier. Michael looked exhausted. Lauren looked furious, not scared anymore, but cornered. The judge didn't waste time. She summarized the findings calmly, methodically, each sentence another brick removed from the wall they'd built. "You told your children their grandmother abandoned them," she said. "You allowed confusion, guilt, and grief to take root. And you continued accepting financial support while doing so." Lauren tried to interrupt. The judge silenced her with a raised hand. "This court finds your actions harmful," she continued, "and motivated by control, not protection." Then she turned to me. "Mrs. Carter," she said, "this court recognizes your patience, restraint, and consistency." I barely breathed. She looked back at Michael and Lauren. "Visitation is granted." My heart stopped. Monthly unsupervised visits, weekly calls, alternating holidays. Lauren's composure shattered. Michael stared at the floor. "And one more thing," the judge added. You will tell your children the truth in the presence of a therapist. Immediately, the gavel came down just like that. Years of silence were undone by one sound. Outside the courtroom, Diane hugged me. You did it, she whispered. You protected them. I shook my head. I protected myself, I said quietly. They just happened to need it too. 2 weeks later, Sophie and Noah were dropped off at my house. They stood in my doorway, uncertain, nervous, curious. I knelt down slowly. Hi, I said softly. I never left you. Sophie burst into tears. Noah stepped forward and hugged me without saying a word. And in that moment, I knew something with complete certainty. The truth always finds its way back to children, no matter how hard someone tries to bury it. The house felt different after that first visit, not louder, warmer. Sophie left her backpack by the door like she belonged there. Noah kicked off his shoes without asking. Little things, but little things are how you know you're home. That first afternoon, we didn't talk about courts or judges or lies. We baked cookies, we played cards, we sat on the living room floor and laughed when the cookies burned. Later, when the sun dipped low and the house grew quiet, Sophie finally asked the question I knew was coming. Grandma, why did they say you left us? I took a slow breath, because this mattered. Sometimes, I said gently, grown-ups make bad choices when they're afraid of losing control. But I never stopped loving you. Not for one day? She nodded, tears filling her eyes, then leaned into me. Noah didn't ask questions. He just held my hand. That night after they were picked up, I sat alone at my kitchen table. And for the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt peace. Not triumph, not revenge, peace. Michael and Lauren didn't apologize, not really. They complied because they had to, not because they understood. But that no longer mattered. Because the truth was no longer hidden. Over the following months, the visits became routine. Weekend breakfasts, school projects, Sunday walks. The children relaxed, they laughed more. They stopped asking if I was going to leave again. Michael and Lauren grew distant, strained by therapy, by consequences, by the weight of their own actions. But I didn't interfere. I didn't lecture, I didn't punish, I simply showed up. Consistently, calmly, without asking permission. And here's what I learned, the lesson I hope someone listening needs to hear: walking away doesn't always mean giving up. Sometimes it means refusing to fight on unfair terms. When my son told me I didn't belong that Thanksgiving, I believed him, so I left. And in leaving quietly, I gave myself the clarity to fight correctly, with dignity, with truth, with patience. If you are being erased, slowly, politely, quietly, pay attention. Silence can be manipulation, and love that demands your disappearance is not love at all. Thank you for listening to my story. If it meant something to you, please like this video, subscribe for more stories like this, and share your thoughts in the comments. You're not alone, and it's never too late to choose yourself.